Eric Burgess here with Music Marketing TV, and today we're looking at how to make a lead sound inside of HIVE 2. So this is the lead sound that we've got. And here's a short example of it sort of in action. I'm automating a couple things, is what it sounds like. And so it wasn't intended to loop there. I just sort of stopped there. I didn't get to a mixing phase. It's comprised of 3 instances of hives. 2 are presets. I started obviously with the sound that I'm going to show you how to make today, but there's an example of it sort of being used and also some of the automations. So you see, we've got a couple automations here, but the ones that are specific for what we want are the cutoff, which is just the filter, and the hive tone, which is a reference to the distortion. So let's go ahead and pull open our synth here. So it's a pretty simple idea. So we're using wavetables in this one. If you're not familiar with wavetables, basically you can load up a bunch of single cycle waveforms and scroll through them. That's just like the easy way of looking at it for now. So basically we're able to scroll through our waveform here. We can do that by changing our position, and each one can yield different results. And we can of course do this in real time. So when I hit a note, we see it's actually changing. So if I were to move this, we get very different sounds. Now, actually, these are pretty similar in texture just because of the nature of this particular wavetable, but you can of course get wavetables that sound very different. So this is the wavetable Clang Bells inside of the harmonics folder. And I've set it up to work as a loop. So when I play it, it just morphs through things, and it's got the spectral interpolator on. But besides that, we've got our wavetable. It's moving around. And on our effects, we have a phaser, an equalizer, and a compressor. If we were to take these off, that's what it would sound like. In the effects, we've got a distortion, a phaser, an equalizer, and a compressor. If we take the distortion off, that's sort of responsible for the texture. That's what we have instead, which actually can be pretty nice sounding as well. However, I didn't like that because it wasn't edgy enough. I wanted something a bit bigger and bulkier. So I threw a distortion on it, and this is the hard clip distortion, and I'm automating the tone as things move. You can see that moved back. And as the tone pushes up, we get a lot brighter, sort of a nasally grab. And that I only wanted at specific moments where it sort of made sense as a musical idea, because having it just as a static thing was not working out very good. So I ended up automating it. We've got a phaser, which right now I've clicked the flanged options and messed with the feedback, but I dialed it back quite a bit without the phaser. It sounds like this. With the phaser. So you can hear the that sound going through it. That's being caused by the phaser. Let's go to somewhere where it's sort of a bit louder here. So that's like one of those things that once I point it out, you notice it, but until then, you don't really realize it's quite there. And when I hear this in other people's sounds, I'm always debating on whether it's a flanger or a phaser or a chorus, because with the right settings on any of those, you can get pretty similar things. But a phaser tends to have this sort of, I call it like a holy sound, like little holes moving through the spectrum. We got our equalizer. Equalizer is just equalizing basic things. You have your frequency selectors, and it looks like we have a slight cut on the mids. I don't know what my motivation was for this. I think I was just screwing around. A bit of a high boost and a bit of a bass cut, followed by a compressor. And if I take the compressor off, so the compressor is bringing things up quite a bit. So it's actually a bit more important in this patch. Now, this is something that I might take off and just do with a external compressor, but I figured comes with the patch and I like the way it sounds. So I went with this one. And that's pretty much the effects. Again, the synth engine actually plays a pretty big role because we are relying on distortion here. And we've got our filter movement also. So if I were to like switch to normal, it's not the same in clean. But man, I love the dirty synth engine. It has just a certain warmth to it. And so that's the general idea. We also have a filter that's been hooked up, and we've got oscillator 1 and oscillator 2 coming through. And I decided to layer it with the sawtooth because it sounded good. So that's what I went with. So I'm going to go ahead and just recreate this patch from scratch, just so you can see sort of how it went down. So first we're going to go to initialize. There we have it. And next we're going to select our wavetable. You do that by clicking on wavetable. We're going to go to wavetable, and we're going to go to harmonics and clanged bells. This is what we got. I had mine on cyclical, spectral, and on loop. And we also started a ways in. I can't remember if I messed with the tables option or not. Let's see. Let's observe. I did. I put it on tables 2. So we'll do that as well. Move the position. And that's what we have so far. Oh, voices. I didn't mention voices, but now it seems like something kind of important. Here, 2 to 4 voices seems like enough. After you go past that, I feel like these will start to get pretty washed out. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to detune it a bit, giving it the stereo image. And one other thing I didn't mention that I'll mention here is you can link the width knob up and have it change with the envelope of the modulation envelope here. So I'm going to do that. I believe I also did this in the other one, which I did. And so it's actually hooked up to the width. And this is just going to have the image change by the same way every time we hit a note. And I just thought it was kind of cool to do that. So nothing real specific, just sort of a move to add interest. And there we are. We're good to go there. Let's move our... Okay, cool. Now what we're going to do is we're also going to add in oscillator 2. I'm doing this ahead of the fact because I wound up doing it later anyways. And I'm going to dial back the volume just a touch. Okay, cool. Now what we're going to do is we're going to switch to dirty and go into our effects. We're going to add that distortion. A very important thing. I'm going to dial the volume back here because I want to drive the distortion pretty hard. And we're going to go to hard clip. Sounds fine to me. Let's run with that. Okay, so now we need to set this up. I like a little bit more resonance. I think I like dialed the resonance up quite a bit on this one. Yeah. And bring it, if you like the brightness of it, you could do that. But I found the top end just a bit rash. So you dial it in or out, and you can make up for this afterwards with the... So that's more of your decision. In the wavetable, there's an option in here called tempo, and that just basically is how fast it scrolls. I'm going to dial this back a bit so we have a little more time to digest the changing waveform. All right, cool. So let's hook up our filter here to our modulation envelope. So we've already got it hooked up to mod envelope 1. We're going to give it a little bit of domain. I always want to go this way, and then it ends up, I want this way because then it'll pull down. So now that we've set this up, that's obviously too fast. So we need to bring our attack up. And then we'll just set this up with a sustain where we'd like it to be. We really want it to just sit down low. So we'll bring the sustain up. I never remember which way goes what. If you want to memorize that, I just move it and then look at what happens. And then I'm like, okay, this way is the down, this way is the up. This plagues me in multiple synths that I use. All right, and the release we're gonna bring way up to. So if we have a short release, you'll hear it, the filter come up when we release a note. And this has to do with how we've got our amplifier envelope set up. I don't want that effect, and I'm simply just gonna make the release longer than the note will ring out, and that'll fix the problem. So that's my solution here. You could also just shorten this release, but this one would still need to be longer than this one. Otherwise, you'd still hear it lifting because this would release before that would release. Anyways, we pretty much have the bulk of the sound here. Let's go into the effects. And now that we've got the hard clip, let's go ahead and just add a couple things. So let's dial in an equalizer. For the equalizer, I'm going to add in a bit of a high boost like I did there. Probably not as much this time though. I quite like that. For the mids, one thing you could try is ducking something, or not ducking. That's like side chaining. Try, bringing one of them down. Maybe, I don't know what a good term of that. Cut. That's what I'm looking for. Try cutting stuff. Move the frequency around. I wasn't a huge fan of this when I was messing with it, which is why I dialed it back as much as I did and sort of just found a pocket to take out a couple mids. I was just screwing around. That was it. Now for the bass, I was concerned about there just being too much bass. So I did do a light cut and just sort of seek for a pocket. This also can help add texture to the mids because the bass can sometimes just get overwhelming and you end up losing texture in your mids. Okay, cool. So now things worth attempting here. We could try a compressor. We could try a chorus. I'm going to go with the thing I went with, which was the phaser. We're going to turn on flanged. And then that's just a bit much. So I'm going to dial the wet way back and bring the feedback up. That's adding that little whoa, yo thing that you're hearing. If I take it off, I kind of want to experiment with 4 voices here. Nope, I don't like 4 voices. We're sticking with 2. And we're pretty much there. We have the bulk of the sound. We could toss the compressor on there and just bring things up lightly. We could bring the amount up. If you want, I'm going to leave the compressor off on this one and pretty much call it good. It's a pretty simple patch, pretty straightforward. Now, if you're curious about the other patches that I used here, and the things that I automated, what are you automating, right? So the automation clips you're witnessing are the tone on the hard clip, and I believe also the cutoff, which is this dude right here. And there you have it. That's how you do that. Now, the other 2 patches I'm using, in case you're curious and would like to know what they are, is this Jazz Mutate, which I love. These patches are more simple in nature, but man, do I love them. I mean, the patches I'm demonstrating right now aren't terribly complex either, but you always see these really fancy patches with all these sequences and things, and a lot of times, man, these are the ones that are these are awesome patches. They're just so easy to be musical with. Also, a nice thing about this patch is if you play soft, the filter changes with it, so you've got some velocity there. I'm also driving things a bit hard. That's something I would change after the fact. I didn't mix this at all. And then I'm running with this guy, which I never even made it out of the presets area. Oh, this is the default preset. I ended up really liking it. I use it right here. Well, over here too. It adds rhythm. So you hear it under there going, but it's also being triggered by notes. So it doesn't have the full rhythm there, and I just really liked what it added, and it just sort of snuck underneath. This is Albion 1 in case you're curious, and that's pretty much it. That's everything that's going on right here. There's literally nothing in the mixer. I loaded 0 things. So that's actually pretty cool for how far I've come without loading a single effect so far. If you have any questions, let me know. Subscribe, hit the bell icon for future videos, and have a blessed day.